Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Greyhammer. Today, we're going to be doing an Eastern Hognose Snake care guide to finish off our kind of four snakes that you might be able to convince your spouse who's afraid of snakes. Um, this is a bit on the harder to convince. I think a Western Hognose Snake would be easier, but keeping with the theme of native species to where I live, um, this is one I'm going to do. I love them. They're so cute. I don't think I'm ever going to have one because this is one that I definitely can't convince my wife that we should get. But I love them. Talk a lot about them. We're going to talk about their care, and we're going to talk a little bit about some snake misconceptions because I really enjoyed talking about some snake facts last time. I might include just a little blurb about snake stuff or whatever kind of animal we're talking about, just some information about general things around them. So some natural facts. Eastern hognose goes out to the Midwest of the United States. So Eastern is a little bit of a misnomer. All the way up into Michigan, to Delaware, all the way west to geography, Texas, I think that's Nebraska, into the Midwest. Then you've the habitats that they like. They really like pine forest and grasslands, so more open areas. They're not a big fan of the heavy underbrush. So when I say example, I live in Alabama, right? Alabama has two main environments. There's others as well, but you can split Alabama in half, like right here. And you've got your Appalachian Mountains and forest here, your Ridge and Valley. This is kind of where I live. And just south of that, you have the Pine Barrens. So that's all this region. Now, you can find the snakes in these areas, probably more in clearings since they like grasslands. But this southern Alabama into Georgia, into South Carolina, these kind of coastal habitats that have a lot of pine forest due to it being more sandy. They prefer those environments. They're not a high sun loving, they just like the more open areas. At least that is what I've heard. Vital stats 28 to 36 inches, so still a pretty small snake, getting 3 feet long at max, and can live 10 to 15 years. They are secure as well, so no worries about them being an endangered species or anything. Enclosure options. First, 3 by 18 by 18, minimal size for a hognose. Might be too small for larger females. The females do get larger than the males, so if you get a 3 foot long female, this would probably be too small. I would suggest a 4 by 2 by 2. Gives the snake enough room to move around. You can always go bigger though, just a little note. 195 for the minimum, 275 for recommended. If you get a really big 36-inch female, a 4 by 2 by 2 might even be a little too small. If you could do like a 5 by 2 by 2, that would be better, but you could make this work for almost any hognose. Lighting. We're going to use a zone 2. It's a great option for snakes that don't require much UVB. It's just hognose, as far as we know, does not technically require UVB. You should give all of your reptiles UVB, and an argument can be made for amphibians as well. But look, this actually has the Western hognose picture there. So Western hognose is going to be much the similar care, if not exactly the same. I'm not covering the Western hognose in this episode. If you'd like a separate care guide for them, we'll do it. They are a little cuter, in my opinion. Same with the Southern hognose. They also are a little bit on the cuter side. Heating. Using the 50-watt bulbs, because they don't need a ton of heat. It gives you some intense heat, though, to facilitate a temperature gradient. 86 at the basking temp, 75 to 85, 60 to 75. Sort of similar to the other snakes that we've done. Not much going on there. Humidity-wise, you're actually going to want a bowl for them to soak in. They're not going to want a full paludarium setup, but you will want like a Zoom Ed corner bowl or create your own mini paludarium, but you don't want too much water. You may need to occasionally mist to obtain a humidity range of about 50 to 60, more during night. And then substrates, it can encourage some burrowing behavior. Again, a lot of this is very similar to some of the other snakes that we've done. There's not too much different between them because they all are all from the same area. It's going to get more different that when we get to feeding. This is a snake that does like to burrow, stay under logs, things like that. So plantation soil is going to be useful there. Again, same thing here as our other snakes. They're going to need a humid hive with sphagnum moss. Give them plenty of driftwood and things like that nature where they can hide. Live plants would be great. Feeding. This is where it's going to get a little trickier. First of all, let me just say in the wild, these snakes mainly eat lizards and frogs and toads. So, in case you couldn't see, none of these are lizards, frogs, and toads. But because those aren't an economic or readily available option, if you turn into a toad breeder and you want to feed your snakes toads, then great. But for most people, that's a pretty unrealistic expectation. And they can be bred to feed either hairless mice, chicks, or quail eggs. Note you do not want anything that is wider than the snake is around. So, and these would be frozen. You frozen it and then thawed. I couldn't find a great picture, so I used this picture. I'm sorry. It is a cute picture of a chick. If your snake is not eating these, a great thing you can do is go to Reptile, and they have a knoll and toad and frog scent that you can put on it, and it can tune in the snake's feeding response so that they'll actually see it as food. And once you do that for a certain amount of time, hopefully you'd get them to sight recognize that as food. It's not really expensive, so the whole scent, it's not a big economic problem. We are going to get straight into just upfront cost, going minimal enclosure. I did include some decor in that, and it's about 380. While being the most difficult of the four that I've covered just because of feeding, them having that weird prey response and they can get stressed out pretty easily, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. They're also the coolest and cutest of the four, in my opinion. And let's talk about why they're so cool. Let's go to the front page because this will actually show it for a little bit. When they are confronted in the wild, the first thing they're going to do is try and scare you off. They do not usually look this flat. They flatten themselves off. They are not a cobra. They are a rear-fanged colubrid that is partially venomous, but not medically significant. In fact, for the most part, their venom seems to be very specific only to toads. It seems to only affect toads. There are some people with allergies, but they will flatten themselves out to look bigger and more impressive, cobra-esque. If that fails, they will start playing dead, peeing on themselves, pooping on themselves, creating a foul musk, writhing like they're sick. It's supposed to make things think, oh, this thing has a disease or a parasite. I don't want to eat it. So it's a really cool behavior. However, that does mean that they could get stressed out if they do that frequently. Just try not to handle them. But realistically, they can be trained on how to be handled. Be very slow in your movements. You're going to want to pick them up from below. Don't come in from above like a predator would. You want to lift it up from below. And if it shows any signs of stress, just let it go. Just Let it get used to you on its own time. Don't rush it. Again, this is a snake that lives 10 to 15 years. They will almost assuredly not bite you unless you're being really, really rough with them. Biting is their last resort. Um, Now, on to this topic that I really, really wanted to talk about. Um, I wanted to talk about aggressive animals. And I think this gets covered on YouTube a good bit by actual like snake and animal enthusiasts. It is very rare for any animal to actually be an aggressive animal. You could say that it's possible with dogs, but for the most part, what people are calling aggressive animals is actually hyper defensive animals. So the defense mechanism for this animal is mainly to play dead. Their defense mechanism is very different than, like, for example, emerald tree boas are known for being big biters. Uh, that doesn't mean that they're go. If you were to have your emerald tree boa just living in your house, let's say you gave it the proper UVB and heating, just living in your house, it would not seek you out and bite you. But because in the hobby, you have them in an enclosure, and then you're reaching into the enclosure, into their space, they see that as, oh, this thing's coming to try and kill me. And so some species, like emerald tree pythons, or emerald tree boas, my apologies, will strike um, really readily. Um, and those get, oh, it's a really aggressive snake. It's not aggressive. It is not going out of its way to attack you. It is doing it as a last resort, as when, or not even as a last resort. Some snakes don't do it as a last resort, they do it as a more deterrence. Um, this is also true of things like where you'll see a person on a trail and you see that the snake starts running towards you. People are like, oh, that snake was being aggressive. No, it wasn't, actually. It was being super defensive. And the reason is, in case you did not know, which, if you didn't know, this is going to be a moment of revelation. Snakes don't have legs. And what makes something able to turn really easily is legs. So snakes have, first of all, snakes don't move that fast. I think the fastest snake, being a black mamba, I believe their top speed is 15 miles per hour. That's not that fast, and that's a fast snake. So they're only somewhat decent at moving forwards. They're not good at moving to the side. They're not good at moving backwards. So for them to get from one place to another, the fastest way for them to do that is just to move forward. So when you see snakes slithering, like if you see that there's a video of like a copperhead or a cottonmouth, I think it was a copperhead. It's You see it on the trail and it just goes straight towards someone. That's not because it's like, oh, I'm going to seek that person out to bite them and envenomate them, because venom is an expensive resource on the metabolism of a snake. It takes a lot of energy to produce venom. It's saying the fastest way that I can get out of this situation is to move forward. And hopefully, I can get past the thing that is in my way. But it's not being an aggressive animal. There are only a few animals that would be considered aggressive. Like, for example, some tigers, if they go man eating, that's an aggressive animal. But like a hippo in a river is actually being super defensive. It's seeing that you are in its territory and it's attacking. An iguana, if you go towards it, it's going to posture itself up. It's going to curl its tail, letting you know, hey, I'm ready to whip this. And it's going to be super, super defensive. But that's not the same thing as aggressive. And I think the language of calling something aggressive has really given a bad stereotype to a lot of animals. They're just very defensive, and there are ways to mitigate defensive behaviors. One of them is moving slowly, sometimes even talking in a smooth voice. And one of the biggest things is if you're going to pick up an animal, pick it up from below the animal. The things that come from above are things that want to eat you. Eagles, hawks, that's the main predator of snakes, is especially owls are really big predators on snakes, um, because they can kill a venomous snake without being bitten because they're so quiet. So you come from below, that's predators don't come from below. Um, that's your best way to kind of be mitigate your defensive um, animals getting stressed out, because stressed out animals is bad for you and it's bad for the animal. It causes the animal to not want to eat, and you might get bitten, which hurts. So that's my talk about aggressive versus defensive behaviors. Um, Please like, comment, and subscribe if you liked this content, and I will see you in the next episode. Goodbye, everyone.